My name is Gemma, and I just turned 34 years old. I had been planning my birthday celebration for months at La Maison, the most elegant restaurant downtown. As a marketing executive, I rarely splurge on myself, but this year felt different. Despite my success, my family, especially my older sister Jessica and her teenage daughter Bella, have always made me feel like I never quite measure up. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, and hit that subscribe button as I reveal how my birthday celebration turned into a nightmare I never saw coming. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Chicago, I always lived in the shadow of my sister Jessica. 8 years my senior, Jessica seemed perfect in every way, at least according to our parents. She had the looks, the charm, and a natural ability to make everyone love her. I was the awkward younger sister, always trying to find my place in a family where Jessica had already set an impossibly high bar. While I was still finding my footing in middle school, Jessica was already the prom queen, dating the captain of the football team, and maintaining a perfect GPA without seeming to try. Our parents never missed an opportunity to remind me how easy Jessica made everything look. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. What they failed to notice was how hard I was trying, and how different our strengths were. After high school, Jessica followed the path everyone expected. She married young to Richard Thornton, the son of a wealthy businessman who had his future mapped out for him. They had the perfect wedding, bought the perfect house in the suburbs, and within a year, welcomed their daughter Bella into the world. From the outside, Jessica had the life our parents had always dreamed of for their daughters. I took a different route. Instead of looking for a husband right out of high school, I focused on my education. I worked part-time jobs to put myself through college, earned a scholarship for my master's degree, and climbed the corporate ladder through sheer determination. Now, at 34, I had finally reached a senior position at a respected marketing firm. I had my own apartment in the city, a career I loved, and financial independence. Yet, despite all my accomplishments, family gatherings were still exercises in feeling inadequate. Jessica would talk about their latest vacation to Europe or the Caribbean. Richard would discuss his business ventures and investments. And my parents would beam with pride while giving me those looks that seemed to ask, "When are you going to get a real life, Gemma?" Then there was Bella. My niece had grown up with every advantage that money could buy. Designer clothes, private school, horseback riding lessons, summer camps in exotic locations. From the time she was little, Bella had been taught that she was special, deserving, and above the rules that governed ordinary people. Jessica and Richard rarely said no to her, and the result was a 17-year-old who looked down on anyone she deemed beneath her social standing, including her Aunt Gemma. The incidents had been building over the years. When Bella was 14, she had made fun of my car, calling it a poor person's vehicle. At 15, she had rolled her eyes when I mentioned my promotion, asking if that meant I could finally afford decent clothes. Last Christmas, she had opened my carefully chosen gift, a book by her favorite author that I had stood in line to get signed, and tossed it aside with a casual, "I already have this." And anyway, I mostly read on my tablet now. Each time, Jessica had made excuses. "She's just at that age. She doesn't mean it. You know how teenagers are." Richard usually kept quiet or was absorbed in his phone during these moments. And I, not wanting to cause family drama, would swallow my hurt and try to move on. But this year was different. I had received a substantial bonus at work after landing a major client, and I decided to do something special for my birthday. I reserved a private room at La Maison, an upscale French restaurant downtown. The place was known for its exquisite food, impeccable service, and elegant atmosphere. It was the kind of place where people celebrated milestone events. And I decided my 34th birthday deserved that level of celebration. I spent weeks planning every detail. The menu selections, the wine pairings, the seating arrangement. I even hired a photographer to capture what I hoped would be a perfect evening surrounded by the people I cared about. Most importantly, I bought myself a gift I had been eyeing for months, a stunning red dress from a designer boutique that had required me to save for 3 months to afford. The dress made me feel beautiful and confident, like the successful professional I had worked so hard to become. The night before my birthday dinner, I called my best friend Amanda to share my excitement and nervousness about the gathering. "Do you think they'll behave tomorrow?" I asked, pacing around my apartment in my pajamas. "By they, you mean Hurricane Bella and her enabler mother?" Amanda replied. I could hear the protectiveness in her voice. Amanda had witnessed too many instances of my family's subtle put-downs. "I just want one night without drama. Is that too much to ask for?" "It shouldn't be," Amanda said. "But honey, you know how they are. Just remember, this is your night. You've worked hard for it. Don't let them take that away from you." "You're right," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Besides, I've invited enough friends to balance out any family tension. And the restaurant is so gorgeous, maybe even Bella will be impressed enough to be on her best behavior." "That would be a first," Amanda muttered. "But I'll be there with you, front and center. If that girl or your sister starts anything, they'll have to go through me first." After we hung up, I laid out my new dress, the red heels I had splurged on, and the delicate gold necklace that had been a gift from my grandmother, the one family member who had always seen and appreciated me for who I was. I fell asleep that night, filled with hope that my birthday would be the celebration I deserved. I arrived at La Maison an hour early on the day of my birthday dinner. The restaurant manager, Pierre, greeted me personally and showed me to the private dining room I had reserved. The space was even more beautiful than I remembered from my initial visit. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over a long table set with fine china, gleaming silverware, and delicate floral centerpieces, featuring my favorite lilies and roses in soft pink and white. "Everything looks perfect," I told Pierre, feeling a flutter of excitement in my stomach. "Thank you for helping make this special." "It is our pleasure, Miss Williams," he replied with a genuine smile. "Your guests will begin arriving soon. Is there anything else you require before then?" I shook my head, taking a moment to simply absorb the atmosphere. The soft music playing in the background, the subtle scent of fresh flowers, the way the light caught the crystal glasses arranged on the table. This was the elegant celebration I had always wanted but never felt I deserved. Tonight would be different. Tonight, I would celebrate my achievements and the person I had become. My closest friends began arriving first. Amanda came early, as promised, bringing a small gift bag and a birthday card. She hugged me tightly, pulling back to admire my outfit. "That dress is absolutely stunning on you," she said, her eyes warm with affection. "Red is definitely your color." "Thank you," I replied, smoothing the silky fabric that fell just below my knees. I wanted to feel special tonight. "You look it," Amanda assured me. "Now, where's my seat? I want to be strategically positioned to run interference if needed." I laughed as I showed her the place card with her name, directly to my right. "I thought this would give you the best angle for defense." More friends arrived, each bringing warm wishes and genuine compliments. My colleague Tom and his wife Sarah brought a beautiful orchid plant. My college roommate Diane flew in from Seattle as a surprise. My neighbor Luis and his husband Michael brought a bottle of champagne. Each arrival added to the festive atmosphere, and I began to relax, thinking that perhaps the evening would go smoothly after all. Then, 30 minutes after the time stated on the invitation, Jessica, Richard, and Bella made their entrance. Jessica was wearing an obviously expensive black designer dress that seemed more appropriate for a funeral than a birthday celebration. Richard was in a business suit that looked like he had come straight from a meeting and hadn't bothered to change. And Bella, my 17-year-old niece, was dressed in an outfit that appeared deliberately casual compared to the elegant setting, ripped designer jeans, and a crop top that I suspected cost more than my entire outfit. "Sorry we're late," Jessica announced, not sounding sorry at all. "Traffic was a nightmare, and then we had to circle forever to find parking." "The restaurant offers valet parking," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "It was mentioned on the invitation." "Oh, Richard doesn't trust valets with his car," Jessica replied with a dismissive wave. "You know how he is about that Maserati." I nodded, not trusting myself to respond without sarcasm. Instead, I showed them to their seats, which I had strategically placed across from me rather than beside me, with Amanda serving as my buffer. Jessica looked me up and down as we reached the table, her eyes lingering on my dress. "That's quite a bold choice," she said, her tone making it clear that bold wasn't a compliment. "I could never pull off that color with my complexion, but I suppose it works for you." Before I could respond, Bella pulled out her phone and began scrolling, not even bothering to acknowledge me or the other guests. Richard at least had the courtesy to wish me a happy birthday before immediately checking his own phone. "Bella, put your phone away," Jessica said, though her tone lacked any real authority. "This is your aunt's birthday dinner." Bella sighed dramatically but slid her phone into her pocket. "How long is this going to take?" she asked, not bothering to lower her voice. "Madison's having people over later. We'll stay for dinner," Jessica assured her, then turned to me with a tight smile. "The room is nice. Does this place have a Michelin star?" "No," I admitted, "but the food is excellent. I've heard their duck confit is exceptional." Jessica nodded, clearly unimpressed. "We had dinner at a 3-star restaurant in Paris last month. Richard had a client to entertain, and they served this truffle dish that was absolutely transcendent." And so it began. The subtle comparisons, the name-dropping, the reminders of their privileged lifestyle. I tried to steer the conversation to more neutral topics, asking Richard about his recent golf trip and Bella about her college plans, hoping to find some common ground. "I've applied early decision to Princeton," Bella said, finally showing some interest in conversation. "Dad's alumni status should help, and Mom's already on the board of the Alumni Association." "That's impressive," I said sincerely. "What are you thinking of studying?" Bella shrugged. "Business, probably. Or maybe law, something that actually pays well." She looked pointedly at me. "Not everyone wants to be still living in a tiny apartment at your age." I felt the sting of her words but maintained my smile. "Well, marketing has been very fulfilling for me. I just landed the Spencer account last month, which was quite a coup for our firm." "Spencer?" Richard finally looked up from his phone. "The department store chain? They're small potatoes. You should be targeting luxury brands if you want real success in marketing." The dinner proceeded with increasing awkwardness. My friends tried their best to maintain positive energy, sharing funny stories and making warm toasts. But each attempt at celebration seemed to be countered by some remark from my family. When Amanda mentioned our upcoming trip to a wellness retreat, Jessica commented on the exclusive spa she visited monthly. When Tom congratulated me on my recent promotion, Richard questioned why I hadn't moved to a larger agency with real opportunities. Then came the moment for gifts. I had specifically requested no presents, wanting only the presence of my loved ones, but several friends had brought small, thoughtful items anyway. Amanda's gift was a beautiful leather journal with my initials embossed on the cover, along with a fountain pen. "I know how you love to write," she said as I unwrapped it. "Maybe this will inspire you to finally start that blog you've been talking about." I hugged her, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness. "Thank you. This is perfect." Jessica examined the journal from across the table. "That's a nice thought, but when would you have time to use it?" "I barely have time to check my email between Bella's activities and my charity work." "Some people make time for creative pursuits," Amanda replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "It's all about priorities." I could see Bella whispering something to Jessica, both of them glancing at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. The tension in the room seemed to increase, despite the beautiful setting and the excellent food being served by the attentive waitstaff. During the main course, I overheard Bella complaining to Jessica. "This is so boring. Why did we have to come? None of my friends are stuck at some lame family dinner on a Friday night." Jessica's response was just loud enough for me to catch. "We'll leave right after the cake. Your dad insisted we make an appearance." Family obligation, you know? Family obligation. Not celebration. Not joy at sharing my special day. Obligation. The word settled like a stone in my stomach, making it difficult to enjoy the exquisite coq au vin I'd been savoring moments before. As the dinner plates were cleared and we awaited dessert, Jessica launched into a detailed account of their summer plans, which apparently included a month on the Amalfi Coast and a cruise around the Greek islands. "You should really try to travel more, Gemma," she said. as if I chose to stay home rather than working within my budget constraints. Travel broadens the mind. Don't you think Bella has benefited enormously from our trips abroad, Richard? Richard, who had been checking stock prices on his phone, nodded absently. Absolutely. International exposure is essential in today's global economy. I caught Amanda's eye and saw her almost imperceptible eye roll. I suppressed a smile, grateful for her silent support. Then, just as I thought things couldn't get more uncomfortable, Pierre approached with a stunning birthday cake, adorned with delicate sugar flowers and a single elegant candle. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel hopeful that this beautiful dessert might salvage the evening. As Pierre set the cake before me, a hush fell over the table. The dessert was truly a work of art, a 3-layered chocolate creation with raspberry filling and buttercream frosting, decorated with crystallized edible flowers that caught the light from the chandeliers. I felt a surge of childlike excitement despite the evening's undercurrent of tension. "This looks amazing," I breathed, genuinely delighted. "Wait till you taste it," Pierre said with pride. Our pastry chef used Valrhona chocolate, imported directly from France. It is his specialty. "Well, it certainly looks expensive," Jessica commented. "Did they charge extra for all those decorations?" I ignored the question, not wanting to discuss the cost of my own birthday cake. Instead, I smiled at the gathered friends and family, trying to recapture the celebratory mood I had envisioned. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I said. "It means a lot to have the people I care about around me as I celebrate another year." "Speech," called out Luis, raising his wine glass. I hadn't planned to make a formal address, but the warmth from my friends encouraged me. I'm not one for long speeches, but I do want to say that this past year has brought both challenges and triumphs. I'm grateful for each of you who has supported me through both. Here's to new beginnings and continued growth. Everyone except Jessica, Richard, and Bella raised their glasses in response. Richard was typing something on his phone, while Bella was clearly taking selfies with her dessert fork held up like a prop. Jessica at least had the courtesy to lift her water glass slightly, though her smile seemed forced. As the cake was being sliced and served, Jessica began a detailed account of their recent European vacation. The villa we rented in Tuscany had the most spectacular view. 6 bedrooms, a private chef, and an infinity pool overlooking the vineyards. Richard's company covered most of it as a business retreat, of course. "That sounds lovely," I replied, trying to maintain my good spirits. "Italy is on my travel wish list." "You really should go while you're still young enough to enjoy it," Jessica said, as if I were approaching retirement rather than my mid-30s. "Though I suppose it's difficult to get away with your type of job. Do they even give you proper vacation time?" "I have 3 weeks annually," I said, knowing this was actually quite good in American corporate culture. "I'm planning a trip to Barcelona next spring." 3 weeks? Richard finally looked up from his phone, eyebrows raised. "That's barely enough time to get over jet lag. In my position, I can work remotely from anywhere in the world. Last year, we spent 6 weeks in the south of France, and I only had to check in for the occasional video conference." "Well, not everyone can have such flexible arrangements," Amanda interjected, her tone deliberately light despite the steel in her eyes. "Some of us have to actually show up to earn our paychecks." Richard's face darkened slightly, but before he could respond, Bella jumped in. "Mom says Aunt Gemma chose career over family, so she has to deal with the consequences." She delivered this pronouncement while staring at her cake rather than meeting my eyes. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. I felt a flush of embarrassment and hurt creep up my neck, but before I could respond, Jessica jumped in. "Bella, that's not exactly what I said." She turned to me with a thin smile. "I just mentioned that different choices lead to different lifestyles. There's nothing wrong with your choice to focus on your career, Gemma." The way she said it made it clear that while there might be nothing wrong with my choices, they were certainly inferior to hers in her estimation. I took a deep breath, determined not to let them ruin my celebration. "I'm very happy with my choices, actually. My career is rewarding, and I've built a life that fulfills me." "Of course you have," Jessica said in the same tone she might use to humor a child. "And it's a perfectly acceptable life for someone with your priorities." I felt Amanda tense beside me, ready to jump to my defense. but I placed a hand gently on her arm. This was my battle, and for once, I wanted to fight it myself. "What exactly do you mean by my priorities, Jessica?" I asked, my voice steady, despite the anger building inside me. Jessica looked momentarily taken aback by my direct question. She was used to delivering her subtle jabs and having me absorb them silently. "Well," she said, reaching for her wine glass, "I simply meant that we all make choices. I chose to create a family and support Richard's career, which has given us a certain lifestyle. You chose to pursue your own ambitions. Both are valid paths." Her tone made it clear which path she considered superior. "Interesting," I replied, maintaining eye contact. "Because from where I sit, it seems like you're suggesting that my life is somehow less valuable or fulfilling because I'm not married with children. Is that what you're implying?" The table had gone silent. Even Bella had put down her phone to watch this unexpected confrontation. "Don't be so sensitive, Gemma," Jessica said with a nervous laugh. "This is hardly the time or place for this conversation." "Actually," I said, surprising myself with my calm, "I think my birthday dinner is exactly the right time and place to discuss how my closest family members view my life choices. If not now, then when?" Richard cleared his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps we should change the subject," he suggested, clearly uncomfortable with any hint of conflict that couldn't be resolved with a corporate negotiation tactic. Jessica seized the opportunity to pivot. "Absolutely. We're here to celebrate, after all." She raised her glass again, to Gemma and her independence. The way she hesitated before the word independence made it sound like a consolation prize rather than a victory. I felt a familiar ache in my chest, the same one I'd carried since childhood when trying and failing to earn my family's approval. Amanda, sensing my distress, smoothly directed the conversation toward the upcoming charity gala that several of the guests would be attending. The momentary tension eased, but I could feel Jessica's eyes on me, calculating and cool. As Pierre and his staff cleared the dessert plates, I excused myself to visit the ladies' room, needing a moment alone to compose myself. Amanda squeezed my hand supportively as I stood. In the elegant restroom, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was successful, educated, and independent. She had fought for everything she had achieved. Without family connections or financial support, she had built a life on her own terms. So, why did I still allow Jessica's opinions to wound me so deeply? I took a deep breath, adjusted the drape of my red dress, and reapplied my lipstick. "This is your night," I whispered to my reflection. "Don't let them take it from you." When I returned to the table, I found an unexpected scene unfolding. Amanda was showing everyone photos from our recent weekend trip to a lakeside cabin, including one of me kayaking at sunrise. My friends were admiring the picture, commenting on the beautiful setting and my adventurous spirit. "I could never do that," Jessica was saying as I approached. "Getting up at dawn to sit in a tiny boat sounds absolutely miserable." "Actually," Amanda replied, "Gemma was the first one awake every morning. She said watching the sunrise over the water gave her perspective. I have a whole series of photos she took that are absolutely gorgeous. She has quite an eye for composition." I slid back into my seat, touched by Amanda's defense of my character and interests. For once, Jessica seemed at a loss for a cutting remark. It was then that Pierre approached with a surprise gift from the restaurant, a bottle of champagne and a small box of handmade chocolates to take home. "With our compliments, Miss Williams," he said with a warm smile. "We hope your birthday celebration has been memorable." "It certainly has been," I replied, accepting the gifts gratefully. As Pierre walked away, I noticed Bella whispering something to Jessica, both of them glancing at my dress. Jessica nodded slightly, and Bella's lips curved into a smile that made me distinctly uncomfortable. Something was coming, and I had a feeling it wasn't going to be pleasant. The champagne was poured, and Tom proposed another toast. "To Gemma, whose kindness and intelligence make her not just a great colleague but a wonderful friend." "Happy birthday." Everyone raised their glasses, even Richard this time. As I took a sip of the excellent champagne, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps the worst of the evening was behind us. I couldn't have been more wrong. After the champagne toast, Pierre approached the table once more, this time carrying a small cake with a single candle. In addition to the dessert you all shared, he explained, we have a special birthday tradition at La Maison. This is our signature chocolate soufflé, made especially for the guest of honor. The small cake looked delicious, with a perfectly risen top dusted with powdered sugar. Pierre placed it in front of me with a flourish. It should be eaten immediately, while the center is still warm and soft, he advised. But first, you must make a wish. My friends began to sing Happy Birthday, their voices creating a warm chorus in the private dining room. Even some of the waitstaff joined in, clapping rhythmically as the song concluded. For a moment, I felt truly celebrated, truly special. Make a wish, Gemma, Amanda encouraged, her eyes shining with affection. I closed my eyes briefly, wishing simply for the courage to live my life on my own terms without seeking approval from those who would never give it. Then I leaned forward to blow out the candle. It happened so quickly that I barely registered the movement. As I bent toward the candle, Bella suddenly rose from her seat and lunged across the table. I heard gasps from several guests, and then felt the shocking cold splash of liquid down the front of my dress. Red wine. The entire contents of Bella's nearly full glass deliberately poured down the front of my beautiful red dress. I straightened up in shock, the candle still burning, as the expensive fabric absorbed the wine, creating a darker, spreading stain across my chest and lap. For a moment, the room was completely silent, everyone frozen in disbelief at what had just occurred. Then Bella spoke, her voice ringing clearly in the stunned quiet. Now you look as cheap as you really are. The words hit me like a physical blow. I could feel every eye in the room on me, witnessing my humiliation. The beautiful dress I had saved for months to buy, ruined in an instant. But worse than the dress was the deliberate cruelty, the calculated public shaming. Jessica was the first to recover. Bella, she exclaimed, though her tone held more embarrassment than true anger. What an accident. I'm so sorry, Gemma. She must have slipped reaching for her water. But there was no mistaking what had happened. Bella hadn't slipped. She had deliberately moved to pour her wine on me, and the satisfied smirk on her face made her intentions unmistakable. That was no accident, Amanda said, her voice tight with anger as she jumped up to help me. She did that on purpose. Richard finally looked up from his phone, seeming to fully register the situation for the first time. His expression darkened not with concern for me, but with annoyance. Do you have any idea how much that dress probably cost? He snapped at Bella. Who's going to pay for it now? Not. Are you okay, Gemma? Not. What's wrong with you, Bella? Just concern for the financial implications. In that moment, I understood so much about why Bella had become the person she was. I sat frozen, wine dripping from the fabric onto my legs and the floor, feeling the cold liquid seep through to my skin. The stain was spreading rapidly across the bodice of the dress, the red wine barely visible against the red fabric except for the darker, wet appearance and the growing chill against my chest. Here, let me help, Amanda said, grabbing her napkin and dabbing at the worst of the spill. Other friends jumped up, offering their napkins, expressing outrage, creating a flurry of activity around me. Through it all, I couldn't take my eyes off Bella, who had returned to her seat and was examining her nails as if bored by the whole situation. There wasn't a trace of remorse on her face. You need to apologize right now, young lady, Tom said firmly, addressing Bella with the authoritative tone of a father used to setting boundaries. Bella rolled her eyes. For what? It's just a dress. It's not like she can't afford another one with her big, important job. The sarcasm in her voice was cutting. This is completely unacceptable behavior, Diane added, her normally gentle demeanor hardened by anger. I've never seen such deliberate unkindness. Jessica finally seemed to realize that the accident story wasn't going to fly. She put her hand on Bella's arm. Apologize to your aunt, she said. Though the command lacked conviction. She's overreacting, Bella replied with a shrug. It's not that big a deal. I felt a hot rush of tears threatening to spill over. The combination of shock, humiliation, and the sudden ruination of something I valued left me struggling to maintain composure. But I was determined not to cry in front of them. I would not give Bella or Jessica the satisfaction of seeing me break down. As I fought to control my emotions, memories flooded back. Jessica accidentally spilling punch on my new dress before a middle school dance. Jessica telling her friends within my hearing that my prom date had only asked me out of pity. Jessica suggesting to our relatives that my scholarship to college was because they had lowered their standards that year. A pattern of deliberate humiliation that had now been passed down to the next generation. And I had allowed it to continue by never standing up for myself, by always prioritizing family peace over my own dignity. Pierre rushed over with additional napkins and a look of genuine distress. "Mademoiselle, I am so sorry. Please, let us help you clean up. We have some club soda that might prevent the stain from setting." "It's a lost cause," Richard said dismissively. "That dress is ruined. Just send us the bill, and let's wrap this up. Bella has plans later tonight." His casual dismissal of the situation, coupled with the implication that Bella's social plans were more important than addressing her appalling behavior, was the final straw. Something inside me snapped, not in defeat, but in a sudden, clarifying anger. The restaurant patrons at nearby tables were trying not to stare, but I could feel their curious glances, their whispered comments. In any other circumstance, I would have been mortified to be the center of such unwanted attention. But in that moment, something shifted inside me. I stood up slowly, wine dripping from my ruined dress. I looked around the table at the concerned faces of my friends and the defensive, embarrassed expressions of my family members. Then I made a decision that would change everything. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "We're not going to pretend this was an accident. We're not going to brush this aside. And we're certainly not going to end my birthday celebration because Bella has somewhere else to be." Bella's eyes widened slightly, unused to being challenged. Jessica began to protest, but I held up my hand, surprising even myself with the authority in the gesture. "For years," I continued, my voice growing stronger, "I've accepted the subtle put-downs, the backhanded compliments, the deliberate exclusion. I've smiled through your condescension, Jessica, and I've tolerated Bella's increasingly rude behavior because I thought that's what family does. We forgive, we make allowances, we keep the peace." I looked directly at Bella, who was now shifting uncomfortably in her seat, but there's a difference between forgiveness and allowing yourself to be a doormat. There's a difference between keeping the peace and enabling cruelty. The room was absolutely silent. Even the waitstaff had paused their activities to watch the scene unfolding. "What happened tonight wasn't an impulsive teenage outburst," I said, turning to Jessica and Richard. "It was the predictable result of years of teaching Bella that she can treat people disrespectfully without consequences." I took a deep breath, feeling an unexpected sense of calm settle over me despite my disheveled appearance. This ends now, not just for me, but for Bella's sake. Because the real world won't be as forgiving of this behavior as you've been. In that moment, with wine soaking my dream dress and every eye in the room on me, I finally found my voice. And I wasn't going to be silenced again. Standing there in my ruined dress, I felt a strange sense of power replacing the initial shock and humiliation. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to shrink away or make excuses for those who had hurt me. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as I continued to speak. "Jessica," I said, turning to my sister whose expression had shifted from dismissive to wary. "This pattern started long before Bella was born. You've always needed to feel superior to me, to put me down in order to build yourself up. I've spent my entire life wondering why my own sister seems to find joy in my embarrassment and pain." Jessica's face flushed. "That's ridiculous. You've always been so sensitive, making everything about you. This is exactly why family gatherings are so exhausting. Is it sensitive to notice that you only contact me when you need something or when you want an audience for your latest achievement? Is it making everything about me when I simply expect basic respect from my family?" I turned to address Richard, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. "And Richard, did you know that your business is the subject of industry rumors about financial irregularities? Jessica has been hiding credit card debt from you for years because she's terrified you'll discover she's been trying to keep up appearances while your company struggles. Jessica gasped. How dare you? That's completely untrue. But the flicker of panic in her eyes told me I had hit close to the mark. My friend Diane worked in finance and had mentioned concerns about Richard's company months ago. Jessica's spending had always seemed excessive, even for their supposed income level. Is it untrue, Jessica? Is that why you've been quietly selling your jewelry pieces one by one? Is that why you've been pushing Bella toward Princeton specifically because of their financial aid options for alumni children? Richard turned to Jessica, his expression stunned. What is she talking about? What jewelry have you been selling? Jessica's composure cracked slightly. It's nothing, just some pieces I never wear. Gemma is just trying to cause trouble because she's jealous of our life. I shook my head. I'm not jealous, Jessica. I'm sad. Sad that you've built your identity on appearances and material possessions. Sad that you've taught Bella that her worth depends on putting others down. I then addressed Bella directly. And you, I said, my voice softer but no less firm. I want you to understand something important. The path you're on leads nowhere good. I've watched you grow from a sweet little girl who used to draw me pictures and ask for piggyback rides into someone who thinks it's acceptable to deliberately humiliate others for entertainment. Bella's defiant expression faltered slightly. For a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of uncertainty in her eyes. The world beyond your parents' protection won't tolerate this behavior, I continued. Universities expel students for bullying. Employers fire people who create hostile environments. Friends and partners eventually walk away from those who treat them with contempt. You're overreacting, Bella muttered, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. It was just a joke. Humiliation is never a joke, I replied steadily. And the fact that you see it that way tells me how much you've been failed by the adults in your life, who should have taught you better. Richard's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Now, wait just a minute, he began, but I cut him off. No, Richard. I've waited years for someone in this family to show me basic respect. I'm done waiting. I'm done accepting less than I deserve. Amanda stood up beside me, her hand on my shoulder in a gesture of solidarity. Gemma has been nothing but supportive of all of you, she said, her voice vibrating with controlled anger. She remembers every birthday, celebrates every achievement, shows up for every event. And this is how you repay her kindness? By humiliating her on her birthday? Tom and Diane rose as well, forming a protective circle around me. Luis and Michael followed suit. Suddenly, I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, who saw my value beyond my relationship to them. I think perhaps it would be best if you left, Tom said to Jessica and her family, his tone leaving no room for argument. Pierre, who had been hovering nearby, stepped forward. I can arrange for your bill to be settled separately, he told Richard, making it clear that they were no longer welcome at my celebration. Jessica looked around at the united front of my friends, seeming to realize for the first time that I had built a life filled with people who respected and valued me. People who were willing to stand up for me when my own family would not. Fine, she said, gathering her purse. Come on, Bella. Richard, this entire evening has been a waste of time. But to everyone's surprise, Richard didn't immediately follow Jessica's lead. He was looking at her with an expression I had never seen before, one of dawning realization and disappointment. No, he said quietly. I want to hear more about this credit card debt and the jewelry selling, and I want to understand why our daughter thinks it's acceptable to behave this way. Jessica stared at him in disbelief. You can't be serious. You're taking her side? This isn't about sides, Richard replied. This is about truth and accountability. Something that seems to be in short supply in our family lately. He turned to me, and for the first time that evening, perhaps for the first time ever, he looked at me with something approaching respect. Gemma, I owe you an apology. Not just for tonight, but for years of allowing this dynamic to continue. I've been so focused on business that I've neglected what's happening in my own home. The admissions stunned me. I had never expected Richard, of all people, to be the one to acknowledge the truth of the situation. And Bella, he continued, turning to his daughter whose smug expression had been replaced by growing alarm. What you did tonight was cruel and deliberate. There will be serious consequences when we get home. Dad, Bella protested, clearly unaccustomed to this new, authoritative version of her father. Enough, Bella, he said firmly. You will apologize to your aunt. Sincerely. Now. Bella looked from her father to her mother, obviously hoping for Jessica to intervene as she always had before. But Jessica seemed too preoccupied with Richard's unexpected stand to come to her daughter's defense. After a long, tense moment, Bella turned to me. I'm sorry for ruining your dress, she mumbled, not quite meeting my eyes. The apology lacked true remorse, but it was a start, the first time she had ever been held accountable for her actions toward me. Thank you for the apology, I said simply. I hope this can be a turning point for all of us. Jessica, realizing that her usual tactics weren't working, switched strategies. Gemma, she said, her voice suddenly soft and wounded. I had no idea you felt this way. Why didn't you ever say anything? We're sisters. We should be able to talk about these things. The attempt at manipulation was so transparent that I almost laughed. I've tried to talk to you many times over the years, Jessica. You've always dismissed my feelings or turned the conversation back to yourself. But tonight isn't about the past. It's about establishing new boundaries going forward. I straightened my shoulders, no longer concerned about the stains on my dress or the whispers from nearby tables. I will no longer accept disrespect from anyone, family included. I love you because you're my sister, but I don't have to tolerate behavior that diminishes me. The strength in my voice surprised even me. Where had this confidence been all these years? Perhaps it had always been there, waiting for the moment when I valued myself enough to speak my truth. Pierre approached again, this time with a beautiful shawl. For you, Miss Williams, he said quietly. Until your friend can retrieve your coat. I accepted the shawl gratefully, draping it over my shoulders to cover the worst of the wine stains. The small kindness from this stranger touched me deeply after the cruelty from my own family. Thank you, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. And thank you for the beautiful celebration. The food was exquisite, and your staff has been wonderful. He nodded respectfully and withdrew, leaving our family drama to resolve itself. Richard turned to Jessica. We need to talk about everything Gemma mentioned tonight. Jessica's face paled. She had never expected her carefully constructed facade to crumble so completely, or for her husband to finally take a stand. Fine, she said tightly, but not here. She turned to me with a look I couldn't quite interpret, something between anger and fear. I hope you're satisfied, Gemma. This is what you've always wanted, isn't it? To turn everyone against me? No, Jessica, I replied truthfully. What I've always wanted is to be treated with the same respect I've shown you. What I've always wanted is a sister who celebrates my successes instead of trying to diminish them. What I've always wanted is to be valued for who I am, not measured against some impossible standard. For just a moment, something flickered in Jessica's eyes, a brief glimpse of the sister I had always hoped for. But then, the wall came back up, and she turned away. Let's go, she said to Richard and Bella. There's nothing more to say here. As they gathered their belongings, I stood tall, surrounded by friends who had witnessed my moment of transformation. The night had not gone as planned, but perhaps it had gone exactly as needed. As Jessica turned to leave, she clearly expected Richard and Bella to follow her immediately. She had already taken several steps toward the door when she realized they weren't right behind her. Richard? She called, her voice sharp with impatience. Bella? We're leaving. Richard hesitated, looking between his wife and me. Then he made a decision that seemed to surprise everyone, including himself. You go ahead to the car, he told Jessica. I'd like a moment to speak with Gemma privately. Jessica's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't be serious. After everything that's happened? Especially after everything that's happened, Richard replied firmly. This has been a long time coming, Jessica. I'll meet you in the car in a few minutes. Jessica's mouth opened and closed without sound, so unaccustomed was she to being contradicted by her husband. Finally, she snapped, Fine, 10 minutes. Then we're leaving, with or without you. She stormed out, her heels clicking aggressively against the hardwood floor. Bella lingered, caught between following her mother and staying with her father. Richard gave her a gentle push toward the door. "Go with your mother. We'll talk more at home." After they had gone, Richard turned to me, running a hand through his graying hair with a weary gesture. "I owe you a sincere apology, Gemma. Not just for tonight, but for years of standing by while Jessica and Bella treated you poorly." The unexpected apology caught me off guard. Richard and I had never had a close relationship. His attention always focused on business matters or deferring to Jessica in family situations. "Thank you," I said simply, unsure what else to add. Richard glanced around at my friends who were watching our interaction with protective wariness. "Would you mind if I spoke to Gemma alone for a moment?" he asked them. Amanda looked to me for confirmation. I nodded, curious about what Richard wanted to say that required privacy. "We'll be right over there," Amanda assured me, pointing to a small lounge area just outside the private dining room. "Just signal if you need us." She led the others out, though I noticed they positioned themselves where they could keep an eye on our conversation. Once we were relatively alone, Richard spoke in a lower, more honest tone than I had ever heard from him. "I've been blind, Gemma. Or perhaps willfully ignorant would be more accurate. I've been so consumed with building my business that I've allowed Jessica to manage our family life without question, and I'm just beginning to see the results of that abdication. Bella's behavior tonight didn't come from nowhere," I said carefully. "No," he agreed, "it didn't. It's the product of years of entitlement and lack of consequences. And if what you said about Jessica's spending and our financial situation is true, then I've been even more oblivious than I realized." I hadn't expected this level of self-awareness from Richard. For as long as I had known him, he had projected an image of the successful, confident businessman who had everything under control. "How did you know?" he asked. "About the financial issues?" I hesitated, not wanting to betray confidences. "I work in marketing. I hear industry talk, and Jessica has let things slip over the years, probably assuming I wouldn't understand the implications." Richard nodded slowly. "I've been trying to keep our challenges quiet, hoping to turn things around before anyone noticed. But if you've heard rumors, others have too." He sighed heavily. "The truth is, we're overextended. The European vacations, Bella's private school, the house, the cars, all of it has been maintained partly on borrowed money and increasingly risky investments. The admissions seemed to cost him something, a crack in the perfect facade he and Jessica had worked so hard to maintain." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "Financial stress is difficult." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "The irony is that we've been living as if we're wealthier than we are, while looking down on your more modest but sustainable lifestyle. You've actually been the financially responsible one all along." The validation shouldn't have mattered after years of condescension, but I couldn't deny that it felt good to hear. "It's not too late to make changes," I offered, "both financially and in how you relate to each other." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "You're right, and seeing you stand up for yourself tonight has made me realize that I need to take a more active role in my family's values, not just our finances." He extended his hand. "Thank you, Gemma. This wasn't the birthday celebration you deserved, but perhaps it was the wake-up call our family needed." I shook his hand, feeling a tentative hope that something positive might come from the evening's drama after all. As Richard left to join Jessica and Bella, Pierre approached with a small package. "The remainder of your birthday cake, Miss Williams. And please know that your meal this evening is complimentary. It is the least we can do after such an unfortunate incident." "That's incredibly generous," I said, touched by the gesture, "but unnecessary. The service and food were impeccable. What happened wasn't your responsibility." "Nevertheless," Pierre insisted, "we want you to remember La Maison for our hospitality, not for this unfortunate event. And please," he added, "when you are ready for another celebration, we would be honored to host you again." After Pierre withdrew, my friends returned, surrounding me with concern and support. "Are you okay?" Amanda asked, examining my face closely. To my surprise, I actually was. Despite my ruined dress and the public spectacle, I felt lighter than I had in years. "I'm better than okay," I said with genuine wonder. I feel like I can finally breathe. What did Richard want? Tom asked, still looking suspiciously toward the door where my brother-in-law had exited. To apologize, actually, and to acknowledge some hard truths about his family. Well, that's unexpected, Diane commented. Do you think anything will really change? I considered the question. I don't know. But either way, I've changed. I won't go back to accepting treatment that diminishes me, even from family. My phone buzzed with an incoming text. I glanced down to see Jessica's name on the screen. I hesitated before opening it, but decided I was strong enough to face whatever she had to say. The message read, I hope you're satisfied with yourself. Richard is threatening therapy for Bella and financial restructuring for our family. Your little performance has really done a number on us. Thanks a lot. No apology, no acknowledgement of her role in what had happened, just blame and self-pity. I showed the text to Amanda, who rolled her eyes. Classic Jessica, she said. Always the victim, never the perpetrator. I turned off my phone without responding. Jessica's manipulation tactics no longer had power over me. So, Louis said, clapping his hands together, this party doesn't have to be over just because the drama queens have left. What do you say we continue the celebration somewhere else? My place? Amanda suggested. I have champagne chilling and a killer playlist ready to go. The idea of salvaging the evening appealed to me enormously. I'd love that, I said. But first I need to change out of this dress. Covered, Amanda said with a grin, pulling out a small duffel bag from under her chair. I brought backup clothes just in case. Not that I was expecting a wine attack, but I know how Jessica operates. I laughed, genuinely amused by my friend's foresight. You know me too well. 20 minutes later, I emerged from the restaurant's bathroom wearing a borrowed black dress from Amanda that, while not as special as my ruined red one, fit well enough to be presentable. Pierre had arranged for a restaurant employee to carefully package my stained dress with instructions for a specialized cleaner who might be able to salvage it. Our group made our way to Amanda's spacious apartment a few blocks away. The night air cool and refreshing after the emotional intensity of the restaurant. Once there, Amanda put on music, Michael opened champagne, and the real celebration began. Surrounded by people who genuinely cared for me, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. These were the people who had seen my worth all along, who had never needed me to be anything other than myself to earn their respect and affection. As the night progressed, we talked, laughed, and even danced a little in Amanda's living room. No one mentioned Jessica, Richard, or Bella again, allowing me the space to process those relationships in my own time. Around midnight, as the party began to wind down and guests started calling rideshares, Tom raised one final toast. To Gemma, he said, raising his glass, who showed us all tonight what real strength looks like. Not the kind that tears others down, but the kind that stands firm in its own truth. To Gemma, the others echoed, their faces warm with genuine affection. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I fell asleep that night without the familiar knot of anxiety about family dynamics. Whatever happened next with Jessica and her family, I had found my voice, and I wasn't going to lose it again. 1 week after the birthday incident, I sat in my apartment with a steaming cup of coffee, gazing out at the city skyline. The morning light painted the buildings in soft gold, a new day full of possibilities. My red dress hung nearby, remarkably restored thanks to the specialized cleaner Pierre had recommended. Though a faint shadow remained where the wine had been, it was barely noticeable unless you knew exactly where to look. Much like the subtle mark on the dress, my birthday confrontation had left its trace on me, but in a transformative rather than destructive way. The initial pain and humiliation had given way to a sense of strength and clarity I had never experienced before. After careful consideration, I had decided to write Jessica a letter rather than attempting a phone call that might devolve into accusations and defensiveness. I wanted to express my feelings clearly, set boundaries for our future relationship, and leave the door open for genuine reconciliation if she ever became willing to acknowledge her behavior. I wrote the letter by hand, taking care with each word. Dear Jessica, I'm writing to you after taking time to reflect on what happened at my birthday dinner. While the incident with Bella was painful, it was also a culmination of patterns that have defined our relationship for years. I'm not writing to assign blame or reopen wounds, but to share my perspective and establish a healthier path forward. For as long as I can remember, I have sought your approval and acceptance. As your younger sister, I looked up to you, wanting to be seen and valued by you. Over time, I've come to understand that our relationship has been shaped by competition rather than sisterly support, by judgment rather than acceptance. I want you to know that I love you. You are my sister, and nothing changes that fundamental connection. But love doesn't require accepting behavior that causes harm. Moving forward, I can only maintain a relationship with you that is based on mutual respect. This means no more subtle put-downs or backhanded compliments. No more dismissing my life choices or accomplishments. No more enabling disrespectful behavior from Bella toward me. I hope you can understand that these boundaries aren't punishments or ultimatums. They're necessary protections for my well-being. I remain open to rebuilding our relationship on healthier terms whenever you feel ready for that conversation. With love and hope, Gemma. After mailing the letter, I felt a sense of peace, having expressed my truth without anger or accusation. Whether Jessica would be receptive remained to be seen, but I had done what I needed to do for myself. 3 days after sending the letter, I received an unexpected call from Richard. I hesitated before answering, unsure what to expect. "Gemma," Richard said when I picked up, his voice sounding tired but resolved. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," I replied cautiously. "How are you?" "Managing," he said with a sigh that contained volumes. "We've had some difficult conversations at home since your birthday. I wanted to let you know that Jessica received your letter. She's not ready to respond yet, but she did read it." "I understand," I said, appreciating his candor. "It wasn't easy to write, and I imagine it wasn't easy to read." "The truth rarely is," Richard acknowledged, "but it was necessary. Actually, I'm calling about Bella. She's been suspended from school for bullying another student. Given recent events, I thought perhaps you might have some insight that could help us address this behavior more effectively." The request surprised me. Richard had never sought my advice about anything before, least of all parenting. "What happened at school?" I asked. "Similar to what happened with you, though less dramatic. Deliberate humiliation of another girl over her clothes and family background. The school has a zero-tolerance policy for bullying. They're requiring counseling before she can return." I considered my response carefully. "I think counseling is exactly what Bella needs, Richard. Not as a punishment, but as an opportunity to understand why she feels the need to elevate herself by diminishing others. And perhaps family counseling would help all of you communicate more effectively." There was a pause on the line. "Jessica is resistant to the idea of family therapy," he finally said. "She believes it suggests failure on our part as parents." "Seeking help is a sign of strength, not failure," I replied. "It shows you value your family enough to invest in its healing." After a thoughtful silence, Richard asked, "Would you be willing to meet with Bella? Just once. To talk about what happened and perhaps offer your perspective? She might hear it differently coming from you than from us." The request gave me pause. Was I ready to face Bella again so soon? But then I considered the opportunity to perhaps make a difference in her development, to help her see a different path forward. "Yes," I agreed. "I'll meet with her. Not to lecture or punish, but to offer perspective." A. 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 Yes. I agreed. 2 days later, I met Bella at a quiet cafe near my apartment. She arrived looking less polished than usual. Her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. Her expression guarded, but lacking its usual arrogance. "Thank you for coming," I said as she slid into the seat across from me. Bella nodded without meeting my eyes. "Dad said I had to. We both know that if you really didn't want to be here, you would have found a way out of it," I replied mildly. "So some part of you must have wanted to come." She glanced up, surprised by my insight. Then she shrugged, a gesture attempting casualness but revealing vulnerability. "Maybe." I decided to approach our conversation differently than she might expect. "I'm not going to lecture you about what happened at my birthday or at your school, Bella. I think you've probably heard enough about that from your parents and teachers." Her posture relaxed slightly, wariness giving way to cautious curiosity. Instead, I continued, I'd like to ask you something. What do you want your life to look like 5 years from now? 10 years? Who do you want to be? The question seemed to catch her off guard. I don't know, she said after a moment. College, I guess? Then a good job, the usual stuff. Beyond the basics, I pressed gently. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of relationships do you want to have? How do you want people to feel when they're around you? Bella was quiet for a long time, considering the questions with more seriousness than I had expected. I want to be successful, she finally said. Respected. I want to matter. Those are good goals, I acknowledged. But here's something it took me too long to learn. True respect can't be demanded or taken. It can only be earned, through how we treat others and how we conduct ourselves. Is that why you never stood up to Mom before? Bella asked, surprising me with her perception. Because you wanted her respect? The question was insightful enough to make me pause. Yes, I admitted. I kept hoping that if I achieved enough, or if I tolerated enough of the small cruelties, eventually I would earn her approval. What I didn't understand was that her inability to celebrate my successes or treat me with basic kindness wasn't about me at all. It was about her own insecurities. Mom's not insecure, Bella scoffed. She has everything. Appearances can be deceiving, I said gently. People who are truly secure don't need to put others down to feel good about themselves. They don't need to prove their worth through material possessions or social status. They find value in who they are, not what they have. Bella absorbed this, her expression thoughtful. The girl at school, she said slowly, the one I got suspended for bullying. She didn't do anything to me. She's actually really smart. Smarter than me in math and science. I guess that bothered me. The admission, small as it was, represented significant growth. It can be intimidating when someone excels in areas where we struggle, I acknowledged. But tearing them down doesn't make us any better at those things. It just creates pain and isolation, for them and ultimately for us. Our conversation continued for nearly 2 hours, moving from superficial exchanges to increasingly honest reflections. I shared stories from my own teenage years, including mistakes I had made and lessons I had learned the hard way. Bella gradually opened up about pressures she felt, from her parents' expectations to social dynamics at her school. By the time we parted, I didn't harbor any illusions that one conversation had completely transformed my niece. Change, real change, would take time and consistent effort on her part, but I saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a glimmer of self-awareness and perhaps remorse. Thank you, she said as we prepared to leave, the words clearly difficult for her. And I really am sorry about your dress. It was mean. I don't want to be that person. The wonderful thing about being 17, I told her, is that you get to decide who you want to become. The choices you make now set the direction, but the journey is just beginning. In the weeks that followed, several unexpected developments unfolded. Richard followed through on his commitment to family counseling, taking Bella even when Jessica refused to attend. He also began the difficult process of financial restructuring, downsizing their home and lifestyle to align with their actual resources rather than maintaining appearances they couldn't afford. At work, I found myself approaching challenges with new confidence. Where once I might have hesitated to speak up in meetings or claim credit for my ideas, I now did so naturally, without apology or qualification. This shift didn't go unnoticed. My boss approached me about leading a new campaign for a major client, citing my refreshing directness and quiet confidence as qualities the client had specifically requested. My personal life flourished as well. I began dating Mark, a landscape architect I met through a community garden project. Unlike previous relationships, where I had often diminished my accomplishments to avoid intimidating my partner, with Mark, I was unapologetically myself from the beginning. To my delight, he found my success and ambition attractive, rather than threatening. 2 months after the birthday incident, I finally received a response from Jessica. Not a letter, but a text message asking if we could meet for coffee. The message was brief and non-committal, giving no indication of her thoughts about my letter or her willingness to acknowledge past behavior. After careful consideration, I agreed to meet, setting clear expectations that this would be a conversation about moving forward in a healthier way, not an opportunity to rewrite history or minimize what had occurred. The meeting itself was awkward but not hostile. Jessica struggled to directly address the dynamics I had outlined in my letter, frequently deflecting to less charged topics or making vague references to family misunderstandings. But the very fact that she had initiated contact suggested a desire, however tentative, for reconciliation. By the end of our coffee, we had reached a fragile truce. Not the deep sister bond I had always yearned for, but a starting point based on clearer boundaries and expectations. Only time would tell if Jessica could truly accept a relationship of equals rather than the hierarchical dynamic she had always preferred. 6 months after my 34th birthday, I found myself planning a solo trip to Barcelona, the journey I had mentioned at my ill-fated birthday dinner. What had once been a distant someday dream was now a concrete plan, complete with flights, accommodations, and an itinerary balancing famous sites with off-the-beaten-path experiences. As I packed my suitcase, I caught sight of the red dress hanging in my closet. Though I had worn it once since the birthday incident, to prove to myself that the memory couldn't taint its beauty, I decided to leave it behind for this trip. Not because it carried negative associations, but because the woman I had become no longer needed that particular armor to feel confident and worthy. Looking back on the past 6 months, I realized that the night I stood up for myself in a wine-stained dress had become a pivotal moment in my life. Not because of the public drama or the family secrets revealed, but because it was the moment I finally understood that allowing mistreatment, even from family, only teaches others that it's acceptable to continue. True family, I had come to believe, is defined not by blood relation, but by love, respect, and mutual support. Some of those connections might be with biological relatives, while others form with the family we choose for ourselves. Both are valid, both are precious, but neither should come at the cost of our dignity and self-respect. As I closed my suitcase, ready for new adventures and experiences, I felt profound gratitude for the difficult lessons that had brought me to this place of inner peace. The road hadn't been easy, but standing tall in your truth rarely is, even when your dress is stained and your heart is aching. The journey to self-respect begins with that first moment of saying enough, and continues with each boundary maintained and each step taken toward the life you deserve. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who treated you unfairly? Share your experience in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember that your worth is never determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to treat yourself and those around you.